Real Estate Auction Radio. I am your host, Doug Dennison. We are broadcasting from beautiful St. Augustine, Florida, the nation's oldest city at WFOY 1240 AM studios. Through the power of the internet, this program is being streamed worldwide on 1240news.com. The show will also be archived on RyalAuctions.com as they are the host of this program. Additionally, this show will be posted on YouTube.com. We're going to be talking about real estate auctions, past auctions, upcoming auctions, different real estate markets across the country. We got a lot of topics today to help us out. We've got several real estate and auction leaders calling in today. We've got Washington, D.C. today. We've also got, on a national basis, Tennessee. Gentleman calling in. He's the president of the National Auctioneers Association, so I look forward to talking to him, too. I'm looking at new equipment here. WFOY just had great news. It was on the front page of the local paper that they are now going to have FM stations, and so this will be broadcast live in about a month on FM 2, which is just great. But I'm looking at a whole bunch of new equipment. Hopefully I'll get it all right and we won't make any mishaps with any of the callers. But pretty excited about this. Our radio show mission statement: to provide an educational experience for listeners in a promotional format for auctions across the country. Those of you who followed this show before, I'm very involved in the legislation, and more than the legislation, the initiation to sell government surplus properties. That has been my thing for more than 20 years in the auction business. Have sold more than 10,000 properties for the government. FDIC, GSA, SBA, Fannie Mae, RTC, United States Marshal Service, all that kind of Department of Defense, all that kind of stuff. That's what I've made a living on for 20 plus years. And I found out about a year ago that, a little bit more than a year ago actually, that there's 14,000 government surplus properties that this country has, and they are not being sold off, and in many cases they sit there abandoned, and every time, every month, every year that they sit there abandoned, bad things happen. Bad things happen in regards to the fact that they go down in price. Bad things happen because they hurt the area, because an abandoned property does nothing for the area except drive down values, basically attract the wrong element, crime, vagrancy, all that kind of stuff. It hurts the area. Nothing happens on a local level either. And so the hope is that we can try to sell these properties. The biggest thing is that an abandoned property costs money to hold. And those of you who are not in the business are probably saying, well, what do you mean? Well, it does cost money to hold property. And I'm going to bring up several examples during this show. Number one was I went down to Miami. There was a congressional hearing. I actually did the show from an abandoned courthouse that had been abandoned for 5 years. Every year it cost $1.2 million to keep that building just sitting there. And so 5 years times 1.2 equals $6 million that we, the American public, are paying for. Okay, we've got a call. Good morning. You're on the air.
Hey, Doug, how you doing? It's Bret Manley with Jeff Denham's office.
Well, Bret, thank you so much for calling in. You've been a frequent caller, and I really thank you for the time. Tell us again who you are, what you do, where you're from, and tell us a little bit about Congressman Denham at the same time, if you would.
Sure thing. Appreciate it. My name is Bret Manley. I'm Congressman Denham's legislative director, and in that capacity, I help him in his role as chairman of Subcommittee on Economic Development, Public Buildings, and Emergency Management in the Committee on Transportation Infrastructure. And that subcommittee has jurisdiction over public buildings and federally owned properties generally, including courthouses. And, Congressman Denham worked on this issue when he was in the state of California. A lot of the same problems we see on a national level we saw on the state level. And so, when he came here, it was a natural fit for him. And he, just hit the ground running. I know you've had an opportunity, Doug, to be very engaged with us on this, and we appreciate your support throughout the past 2 years, and we hope to continue going forward as we push to get the federal government to sell more property.
Well, that's interesting because there's a new session, and what does that mean to old bills and all that kind of stuff? Remember, you're talking to real estate investors and real estate brokers, but you're also talking to the general public. So none of us really know the system up in Washington, D.C. What happens, because Congressman Denham really did a great job, and he got bipartisan support, and he got H.R. 1734 passed in the House, which was very good. And tell us where that bill sits right now, and explain the bill, if you will.
Sure thing, Doug. So for those who aren't aware, so the new Congress will get sworn in, I believe, January 3rd of next year. And at that point, any unfinished business, so to speak, things that have not been signed by the President, whether they're passed by the House of Representatives or not passed by the House of Representatives or the Senate or what have you, anything that is lying on the table will have to start back at the beginning of the process. So if you remember that song, How a Bill Becomes a Law, right? Will have to be reintroduced, go back through the committee process, go back through a vote and all that kind of stuff because there's a new Congress in session. So the bill you referenced, H.R. 1734, the Civilian Property Realignment Act, we were fortunate to pass it through the House, bipartisan support. At this point, we've been unable to navigate the confines of our friends across the street at the Senate.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks like at this point we're going to have to reintroduce at the beginning of the year. We've been working with Senator Carper and Senator Collins on the Senate side to try and get some sort of bill passed out of there, so maybe we could get into a situation where we're conferencing the two bills, negotiating an agreement between the two. We're running out of daylight here. Obviously, it's mid-December, so that doesn't necessarily look likely, though I retain a small sliver of hope that we can get it done. And as you said, the Civilian Property Realignment Act, at its core, creates a commission kind of like Bret did for DOD properties that would analyze our federal property holdings across the country and decide what do we need and what do we not need. And, the main goal of this is to get rid of property we don't need that's sitting there vacant, costing the taxpayer dollars, and to consolidate lease space. You got a lot of people spread out over large areas that cost a lot of money. And with new work sharing and technologies and stuff, it's a lot easier to put more people in less space and ultimately save the taxpayer dollars.
Well, tell me what BRAC is again, and for our listeners who may not understand that.
Yeah, the BRAC process was started in the late 80s to consolidate defense properties. We had a lot of military bases that were left over from World War II and the Cold War that, leaders had decided probably wasn't in the best tactical and strategic long-term defense interests of the United States. So it was always difficult, because you have a lot of not-in-my-backyard type stuff up here in Congress. So, everybody wants the other bases to be closed, not the one in their state or the one in their district. So in order to get around the politics of the situation, where you had individual members blocking reforms because they didn't want to lose their base regardless of whether or not it was performing,
right,
they set up this commission, the Base Realignment Commission, BRAC, that would make those decisions independent of Congress. And then Congress, those things would be then sent to us, and they would they would be enacted regardless of what Congress would have to act to disapprove of those recommendations. So the idea is you create a very difficult situation for any one person to stop.
Okay.
It would need to be a collective, whereas the way we have it now, it's very easy for one person to stop that. So what we wanted to do was the same thing for civilian property. It's different. You're not moving an entire community. Obviously a military base has tens of thousands of people that live there.
Right.
And oftentimes we're talking about office buildings, a post office, train station, or whatever it is. We're not talking about moving communities. So in a way, it can be a lot easier, but we still have the same kind of problems.
Well, you and when I say you, your whole team with Congressman Denham has worked really hard on pushing the fact that government surplus properties cost the American taxpayer a great deal of money and could be better served by selling them. And what were some of your reasons that this would help the American taxpayer?
Well, a really good example is the old post office here in D.C., and you and I have talked about this before. The old post office, for those of your listeners who have never been to D.C., it's just steps from the White House. It's got a very beautiful clock tower where, at the top of it, it's managed by the National Park Service. You can great view of the city. But inside the building, it's just depressing. The annex of the old post office is empty. It's just totally empty and dilapidated and falling apart. And then the rest of the area is kind of like 99-cent type shops. And it's like right down the street from the White House, and there's a lot of private investment interest in that property, and it was costing taxpayers $6 million a year, for this to just sit there. And so we had a couple hearings there. Unfortunately, the GSA got off their rear ends, and we're able to get an agreement with the Trump organization where they're going to come in and redevelop that property. They're going to keep the shell because it's a historic building, turn it into a hotel, and generate $3 million a year. So you're seeing a $9 million windfall a year for the taxpayer because of that deal. What we want to do is recreate that type of situation, everywhere. We were down in your neck of the woods in Miami.
Yep.
You joined us for a hearing at the Dower courthouse.
Yes.
Which has been sitting there costing taxpayers, $1.5 million a year to sit there vacant. And we highlighted the waste, and I'm happy to say that GSA plans to enter into a lease out situation. It's a historic building, so they can't tear it down, but they're gonna seek to get some private companies and investors in there, and hopefully start returning money to the taxpayer.
Well, that's great, and that's what this whole process is about, and this is why I've been so interested. I have a vested interest, of course, that government auctions, real estate auctions have been my life for 20 years, but any time you can go from, as you say, in the post office, costing the American taxpayer $6 million a year to a place where $3 million is coming in, that's got to be a big, big hurrah for the American taxpayer. And so you should be, thanked by everyone for that kind of stuff. What are Congressman Denham's plans for this new session? How is he going to get involved in trying to move this process along? I know he's very big in other areas. The veterans is of course a big one to him, but in this area of expertise that he has, which is trying to get rid of properties that are costing the taxpayer money, and you said already he's got this basis of experience in California and brought it to Washington. What's his plan, if you will?
Right. Well, we've been meeting. At this point, it's kind of been like a one-man, road show. We've been fortunate enough to have a lot of support from Chairman Micah of the Transportation Infrastructure Committee. Who's a representative from Florida, your home state.
Yes.
And so what we've been trying to do is really build some support across the aisle, or across the street rather, in the Senate, and try and get the administration to take a more active role pushing this. We had Administrator Tangerlini in the office last week, Dan Tangerlini, who runs GSA, and we're working with him, trying to figure out a way that we can come to some sort of common ground and get administration buy-in. Because at the end of the day, we can push really hard over here in the House. We can make a lot of news and make a lot of headlines, which we've been successful in doing. But in order to get something done, we're going to need the other side of the aisle. We're going to need the Senate to buy in on this too. So pretty much our goal for the next session is to continue the efforts that we're doing, and then kind of reach across the Senate, get some of those guys involved, get the White House involved, and it might not be exactly what we want to happen, but progress is progress. So we're very much interested in trying to find some compromise where everybody can agree, so we can move this process forward, because it's just been it's been too long. I mean, this kind of stuff has been going on for years. Taxpayers deserve better, and it's just time. It's not it's not necessarily the biggest lift. With all the issues that we see in the news, it's not fiscal cliff. We're not dealing with $1 trillion. But as you said, $3 million a year, it adds up. Just because we're dealing with issues that involve trillions doesn't mean we can't pay attention to ones that involve millions too.
Well, it's it's $3 million for the good side, the plus side, but $6 million, to take away from the negative side. So $9 million, and that's just one property. The GAO came up with a number for the 14,000 government surplus properties. Is that right? Has that moved any way up or down?
So the Government Accountability Office, and for your listeners who don't know, that's like our independent auditor. They kind of look into the government and how it works for us when we ask them to, and they issued a report long ago, and they've noted this issue generally as being on a high-risk list of the government, things that we just generally don't do well. And they've determined that we waste over $1 billion a year on unneeded and unused properties.
Give that one more time, because I just want to make sure our listeners hear that.
Yeah, over $1 billion a year.
$1 billion a year that we waste as taxpayers because there's government surplus properties that are abandoned, and they're just sitting there, and we're paying out $1 billion, and that's just not right.
Sure. I mean, and this doesn't even include just abandoned buildings. I mean, there's post offices all across the country. I mean, some of your listeners will walk into these things. The post office is functioning. The rest of the building is empty because it used to be some shared office space with some executive department. And now we're paying for that empty building. And so, what we're trying to do here is just like winnow away at that, and until we bring some more attention and prioritize this type of thing, it's just going to keep going on.
Okay, you mentioned Senator Carper. Tell me about his bill a little bit and how you're working. And I know that, because I've been up there a couple of times, everybody likes their own thing, and it should go exactly the way, but compromise is the way of life, and baby steps are better than no steps. I think the American public is just really frustrated with the fact that the Senate and the House can't get along, and the Democrats and Republicans can't get along, and the ones that are hurting are the American taxpayer. And I know you know that. How is Senator Carper's bill different in Congressman Denham, if you could?
Well, Senator Carper is coming at this from a different approach. And I don't know the specifics as well as I know of our bill, but his, generally speaking, would empower the Federal Real Property Council, which exists currently, to dispose of more properties. And our view on that is it's not a grand enough scope. It's nibbling around the edges where we really need to take a huge bite out of this.
Okay.
And we've talked about doing a first then last type of situation where his process is engaged at the outset, and then our process will take over, or some sort of merger of the two.
Okay.
Mr. Denham is not a hardliner. He's open to compromise. He wants to get things done more than anything else, and so we've been working on that. They've been trying to get a test vote in the Senate over there. They have different rules than us this week, and we're kind of trying to figure out where all our problems are on the Senate side and who we have to satisfy to get this thing through across the finish line.
And you mentioned Senator Collins. What state are they from, and do they have another bill, or are they just helping out Senator Carper's bill?
Senator Collins is from Maine. She's the ranking member on the Committee of Jurisdiction.
Okay.
For this particular issue, Senator Carper's from Delaware. So their connection. He's also on the Committee of Jurisdiction, so that's their interest in the thing. We had a meeting, Jeff did, with Senator Collins earlier this week, where we talked about this, and we're firing language back and forth, trying to find a way that we can get something across the finish line in the next couple of weeks. And if we can't, we'll be back at it first thing in January.
Well, it'd be wonderful if it could be done in this session, because the American taxpayer need some good news, and I think it's really a win-win for everybody. I think the Democrats and Republicans can wave the victory flag, and this all happened because the president brought this out in his State of the Union address in 2011, saying, there's all these government surplus properties that are just laying vacant and need to be sold and bring in his words, were billions of dollars to the American taxpayer. I mean, that should be 2 out of 3, and just let's now move the Senate to a side where everybody could agree, hopefully.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, having the president come out and say that at the State of the Union with such a big audience is certainly a boost to the cause. We appreciate their involvement. We look to work with them, more in the future, and hope to get them a little bit more engaged than they've been in the past. But as I mentioned, Administrator Tangolini's been working with us, yes, and we look forward to working with him as well. Good.
Well, it's everybody needs to play together, and that's wonderful. I have been very impressed with Congressman Denham. I've met him a couple of times, and he gave me some time to really talk about his role, his mission in this, and he's got some passion for this, so this is wonderful. I also get the weekly Congressman Denham basically progress report, which is a wonderful thing, and it's emailed to me and it's free. How can anybody else get this? Because it really shows what the congressman is doing and his ups and downs and trying to move things along.
Sure. Yeah. Well, you can visit us at denham.house.gov. It's DENHAM .house.gov, and sign up for our newsletter. We try to keep folks informed as much as possible. You can give us a ring in the office anytime you want. Here in Washington, shoot us an email on the website. Again, it's denham.house.gov. Sign up for the newsletter, or just send us a note. Let us know what's going on. If you have a property that you know about, you're interested in, and you want us to take a look at it, please let us know. A lot of times we just don't know that these things exist. There's no master list that we're working off of here. So, a lot of times somebody points it out to us, and it ends up being the next thing we're focusing on. So, again, folks would visit us, denham.house.gov. Happy to share any kind of information that we have and keep folks updated on what's going on.
Well, Bret, thank you so much for calling in. I appreciate it. And I just want to remind our listeners that you can make a difference. When we were down in Miami, we were asked to write letters in support of the action, and 9 VIPs and myself sent out letters that were posted in the Congressional Record. So we kind of feel that we made a difference in a small way, and I encourage everybody else to do the same. Bret, thank you so much. You have a great weekend.
Thank you, Doug. Appreciate your involvement, and thanks again for all your help.
You bet. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Bret Manley, he is the legislative director for Congressman Denham. Congressman Denham has been reelected. He's from California. Again, I've had the chance to meet with him. He's been on the radio show, Congressman Denham, along with Congressman Long, Congressman Duncan, and Congressman Micah, all in support of getting rid of these properties and making a move to help the American taxpayer. And so very, very appreciative of Bret's call. Thank you very much. We're going to go for a break, and then we'll be back for our second half of the show. And thank you for listening. All right, we are back. You're listening to the National Real Estate Auction Radio Show. I'm your host, Doug Dennison, and very, very excited about the fact that Washington, D.C. called in today to tell us about what's happening or not happening with the government surplus property initiative to sell properties, to take it off the hands of the American taxpayer, all these holding costs. Bret Manley came on the show. He's a legislative director for Congressman Jeff Denham, which sponsored H.R. 1734, which was passed in the U.S. House of Representatives. His words, the properties that are now not being used is costing the American taxpayer $1 billion a year. $1 billion a year. Incredible. All right, we get another caller. Good morning. You're on the air.
Good morning, Doug. J.J. Dower. How are you?
Well, J.J., thank you so much for calling in. Tell us, again, who you are, what you do, and where you're from, sir.
All right, Doug. I'm from La Follette, Tennessee, and I have a company here called Ayers Auction Company, and, of course, I'm the CEO of Martinet Alliance, a national auction group, and currently serving as president of the National Auctioneers Association.
Well, that's a lot of hats, sir.
Probably too many, my wife would say.
Well, again, congratulations. You've been on the show several times, and I appreciate all your time and effort on behalf of auctioneers. Congratulations again on being elected as the president of the National Auctioneers Association. Let's go step by step. Let's go National Auctioneers Association. What is that? Who is that? What is their mission?
Doug, they're located out of Overland Park, Kansas. It's 4,000 auctioneers from across the country and several other countries now. It's a trade association made up of auctioneers, and it's to the auction profession what the realtor logo means to the real estate profession.
Okay, and that's anyone from an individual to a large firm, and sometimes they do just personal property, sometimes they do real estate, sometimes they do big ones. So it must be difficult to try to manage all the needs of everybody, and then everybody coming to you and say, hey, JJ, how about this?
Yeah, you're right, Doug. I mean, it's a smorgasbord of people. It's everything from people selling pots and pans to industrial equipment to cattle, horses, cars, real estate, everything from a mom and pop company to large national auction firms with, staffs of 100. So it's a pretty diverse group of people.
I would say. Well, again, congratulations. Is this a 1-year term, a 2-year term? How does that work?
Well, it's kind of a 6-year commitment. You're first elected to the board, and you serve on the board of directors for 3 years.
Okay.
And then you'll step up to vice president if you choose to run for that office.
Right.
1-year term. President's a 1-year term. And then when I get done in July this year at the National Convention in Indianapolis, I will become chairman of the board for a year. So it's basically a 6-year commitment that you make.
Well, you are with Ayers Auction and Realty, which has been around for a long time. I'm sure that they wanted you involved in the national level because the auction profession has been good to Ayers Auction, and Ayers Auction has been good to the national auction profession.
Yeah, I mean, our company is now a second-generation company. My father-in-law, Hack Ayers, started it in 1957, and 25 years ago he served the National Auctioneers as president, and has since been elected to the Hall of Fame of the NAA. So, it's a group that we've supported throughout the years and always been involved in. And our company started out as like most little small-town auction companies, on Friday and Saturday night doing we can call it a barn sale, but it wasn't much more than a barn, but selling personal property on Friday and Saturday night, and then finally made the transaction in 1970 to the real estate industry, and since then it's been 90% of our work is real estate related today.
Well, I know that many of the top auctioneers in this entire country started by selling pots and pans, and basically honed their craft that way, and now from selling pots and pans, they're selling $1 million real estate properties. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the national progression. If you talk to most of these guys who've been around for any point in time, their startup story is pretty much the same. In the beginning, they sold anything they could get their hands on.
Well, very good. Well, tell us about your third passion, which is MarkNet Alliance, and you are the CEO of MarkNet Alliance. What is that, and what do they do?
Well, MarkNet Alliance was started 6 years ago, basically through friendships created at the National Auctioneers or Certified Auctioneers Institute. And it started with three people deciding that they thought this thing could gain some ground. And we originally started MarkNet with 10 companies across the country. And today we have 55 member auction companies in 26 states, and actually we have our first international company. We have a company in South Africa now.
Wow, that's wonderful. And MarkNet, it seems that, and my company, Rowell Auctions, is very active, and it seems like MarkNet decided to get more high-tech and more internet savvy, and that's one of the reasons that people have hooked on, because they see the future.
Well, yeah, I mean, MarkNet, due to the fact that it does consist of 55 companies, is able to create some technology that no single company would ever be able to produce on themselves, just due to the cost.
Right.
And we're able to share some resources. You know, we have 150 or 60,000 registered bidders now throughout the states and several foreign countries. We have a mailing list of 600 or 700, email list of 600,000 or 700,000 now actual investors across the country, and then we're able to collaborate on several deals. As you know, your company Rowell just had a successful sale in North Carolina last week, and $11 million that involved 3 MarkNet companies participating in that one sale with Rowell and House and Pratt. So, we're able to do a lot of joint deals together and a lot of crossover bidding, so it just kind of makes for a nice family environment.
That sounds like a legal firm, the Rowell, House and Pratt.
Well, tell those guys that.
Yes, I heard it was very, very successful in that, and that's wonderful. Right before you came on, we had Bret Manley, the legislative director for Congressman Jeff Denham. They sponsored H.R. 1734, which was passed in the U.S. House of Representatives. I know you and I have talked before about the need to sell these properties. The GAO said there's 14,000 government surplus properties that are not being used. Bret Manley today said that each year these properties are costing the American taxpayer $1 billion of hard-earned money. You and I have talked about this before. Give us your thoughts on what the auction profession could do for these 14,000 government surplus property.
Well, it's as we've talked about before, Doug. Obviously, that's surplus waste, and now with the financial cliff that's hanging over our head, obviously revenue needs to be created from some stream, and obviously expenses need to be cut out. So,
yes.
Auctioning off these properties not only create a revenue source for the government, but it also gets rid of a huge liability burden standpoint of the taxpayers by maintaining and keeping these assets up. And then your local auctioneer has local product knowledge and local buyer resource. And, to bundle these assets would be such a huge mistake.
Yes.
Because it's just you're cutting the number of people down that can play this game.
Yep.
Instead of 10 or 15 bidders, you can have 115,000 bidders.
Yep.
For this many assets in this many different locations. So, I mean, my biggest deal with it is I want the government to sell these assets. sure wouldn't want the thought of them selling them in bundles and Wall Street being the buyer investor of these assets instead of people in the local communities having an opportunity to buy a post office that's been closed or office building that's been closed. I mean, I think they could do a lot more at the local level than they can at the national bundle level.
Well, I mean, I think, all the politicians would say that they're all for the private sector and they're all for creating new jobs and they're all for the little guy. I'm hoping too, because the easiest way would be, Wall Street firm, you over here, you take care of these 1,000 properties, and the banker over here, you take care of these 1,000, and what that does. Can you imagine, for instance, JJ, if you had a big government building in your hometown and it's been abandoned for 5 years, and so number one, everything is going down in value around it. Probably crime has gone up in the area because it's an abandoned property. There's no taxes coming into the local municipality, and you're a local businessman who has a building nearby and has seen the fact that this building has been closed and abandoned for 5 years. It's hurt your property value, it's hurt your sales, it's hurt your business, but you're still thriving, and you'd like to have a shot at buying that property. Can you just imagine that if it got sold to a big Wall Street firm, how you would feel?
Well, and the thing about it is, if you talk to, I have, during the last few years, had the opportunity to have some conversations with several of those Wall Street investment firms who are buying these bank assets in bundles.
Yes.
And their thought process is, let's pull out a few good ones that we can get our money back on, and then we just trash the rest.
Yes.
Whatever happens with them happens.
Yes.
Well, that sounds all well, fine and good when you're making a financial decision from their end, but to the neighbor down the street,
yep,
who's continued to have a abandoned, dilapidated piece of property in their neighborhood, that's a killer to the local community. If somebody would, buy the asset that's going to show it some 10 or 11 care and use this asset, not only do they revive the neighborhood, they're putting money back in the tax rolls, local jobs back into the local job market.
Yes.
And it's just trickle-down economics.
Yes. Very, very definitely. It's if a private buyer could come in there, all of a sudden he's hiring new people, he's buying goods and services, just like he said, he's showing love for the property, people are coming and going, you're upgrading the value of the businesses in the area, you're upgrading the value of the property value in the area, and just like you said, you're now paying taxes to the local municipalities, which of course the federal building does not do. So I am right there with you. I mean,
it's not any different than a pie. If you walked into the local restaurant today and they wanted to sell you a whole pie for $8, you probably don't need a whole pie, but you might pay $2 for a piece of that pie.
Yep.
And so that's if the government wants to maximize the financial gain for us taxpayers. A bundle means a big discount. Selling it pieces of pie means market value.
Yes. Well, extremely well said, and I appreciate you calling in on this. Again, JJ, President of the National Auctioneers Association, CEO of MarkNet Alliance, and a partner in Ayers Auction and Realty. Are you getting your frequent flyer miles pretty good?
Oh, yeah, my status level keeps moving up. If I get any more miles, I'll be piloting the plane before long, I think.
I was going to say, you driving the plane, yes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for calling in. I appreciate it. I appreciate the fact that you're volunteering as the president of the National Auctioneers Association, which is a group of 4,000 auctioneers. I do thank you for your support of this radio show, and also the fact that you've been very supportive of the fact that the government needs to sell these 14,000 government surplus properties. So how can people get a hold of you, JJ?
The best way these days is to email at jj@marknetalliance.com, or they can bring my phone, which my phone's always traveling with me now. I'm a mobile traveler, 423-592-7067.
Very good. Give me that email one more time, if you would.
jj@marknetalliance.com.
Very good. Again, congratulations. Thanks for being on the show again, and I look forward to staying in touch.
All right. See you, Doug. Take care.
All right. Take care. All right. That was J.J. Dower. I had some really good thoughts on the 14,000 government surplus properties that we hadn't mentioned in this show. Number one, that the fact that if you end up selling them in bundles, you're not going to make anybody happy except for the people that you're giving the large bundles to, because that's not going to be market value. That's going to be discount. And so very, very good thought on that. And his analogy of the pie, the pie, you can sell it for $8 for a full pie, but if you sell, 6 pieces of pie at $2 a piece, now you're getting value. Now you're getting market value. So, JJ, thank you so much. And he also brought up some great points that the local auctioneer has the basically the database of everybody in that area, and we want to keep them involved as much as possible. All right, we're going to go for a quick break, and we will be right back.
MarkNet Alliance is a national, membership-based network of 41 auction companies. Our companies are successful auction professionals with proven track records and thriving businesses. The MarkNet companies have a staff of over 540 employees who are working hard every day to meet the goals of their clients during our ever-changing economy. MarkNet companies are able to achieve these goals through cutting-edge technologies and ever-growing investor pools. To view the hundreds of auctions currently being conducted, or for more information, visit marknetalliance.com.
All right, we're back listening to the National Real Estate Auction Radio Show. We have had 2 great guests on today. Bret Manley, the legislative director for Congressman Jeff Denham, who is the sponsor of H.R. 1734, which was passed in the U.S. House of Representatives. I learned some stuff today, as I always do when he comes on board. Again, the next session, we're all talking about the next session. Well, it doesn't start until January, so there still is a ray of hope to get some stuff done in this session, and that's great. And the fact that they'll have to start brand new if it doesn't get passed in this session. He talked about the fact that they are working across the street, basically in the Senate, and working with Senator Carper from Delaware and Senator Collins from Maine. Again, she's the ranking member in one of the big committees up there. And they're trying to work out a deal, and I really hope that they're successful. Also, Bret said that Dan Tangolini, who is the GSA head right now, came into the office. They got together and are trying to come up with strategy to work through this process. So I like the fact that we're moving forward. I'm frustrated with the amount of time it takes for basically a thought that the president came up with, and should be a win-win situation for Republicans, Democrats, the Senate, the House, and I'm hoping that Congressman Denham continues his passion of getting this done, because he's doing a fine job. And again, I've met with him. I know his passion. He was on the show before, and along with Congressman Micah, Congressman Long, and Congressman Duncan, all of them saying that we need to sell these properties. Bret Manley did mention that it cost $1 billion a year for taxpayers, and they don't know that. These 14,000 government surplus properties is costing you and I $1 billion a year, and that's not right. That's not right. And I know that I guess $1 billion is not that big a deal anymore. Well, I think it is. I know in the headlines it doesn't seem like it, and we're talking trillions and fiscal cliff, and $1 billion is nothing. But man, you've got to save your pennies, and they end up in dollars. I think my father told me that one time. So I appreciate Bret coming on the show. Also, J.J. Dower. He was our second guest, president of the National Auctioneers Association, CEO of MarkNet Alliance, and a partner in Ayers Auction and Realty. Really a guy in the know about the auction business, connections everywhere. Took the time to call in, talk about the NAA and MarkNet and in the auction business in general. Put his stamp forward and said, hey, we need to sell these 14,000 government surplus properties. Appreciate his time and effort. This show is sponsored by Rowell Auctions. They are a national real estate auction firm that started in 1936. They do online auctions, on-site auctions, and ballroom auctions. They have offices in Florida, New Jersey, California, Georgia, and have alliances with auctioneers and real estate brokers across the country. They do government auctions, bank auctions, bankruptcy auctions, and much more. They've got a big auction schedule coming up, so check out their website at www.rowellauctions.com. Get on their email list so that you can be notified. Again, that's rowellauctions.com. Or you can call them at 800-323-8388. That's 800-323-8888. J.J. Dower was talking about the fact that Rowell Auctions just completed a big sale with two other auction firms, Walter House's firm and also Chris Pratt's firm, working together in North Carolina. They ended up with $11 million sale, making the seller happy. Everybody didn't get the full piece of the pie. Everyone didn't get all of everything they wanted, but they made it to the finish line and helped out the seller. Okay, well, that's what I'd like to tell, the House and Senate. It's not going to be exactly everything that you want, but you're going to have to work together and get it done for the end user, which is the American taxpayer. So get these 14,000 government surplus properties sold. Bret Manley did say that the GSA has been working hard with Congressman Denham's office and Congressman Micah's office, and have, number one, got a property up in Washington, D.C. that has been vacant for 10 years, costing the American taxpayers $6 million a year. They have worked with the Trump organization, worked out a deal that's going to be a lease, and so we've lost $60 million, but we don't have to lose another $6 continually. And so you've really made a difference in $9 million with this one property. $9 million with this one property. And so kudos to Congressman Denham and the GSA, and also Congressman Micah in getting that done. And Bret Manley also mentioned that the abandoned courthouse that I was in, and did an interview with Congressman Micah right there, had our show right there in this abandoned courthouse. That had been abandoned for 5 years and was costing the American taxpayer $1.2 million a year. And Bret told us that a new plan is getting into gear where they are going to have a private sector business get involved and take that off of the taxpayers, really the shoulders of the American taxpayer. So good stuff is happening. Again, kudos to GSA in helping that process. Kudos in Congressman Denham and Congressman Micah. We are going to be back next week. We've got an exciting show planned. I want to thank everybody for listening, and again, our guest for calling in. Have a wonderful weekend and enjoy your families, everybody. Take care.